the Craft in a long time.
I wish it had been a long time since I had seen the Craft.
And
we're talking about Kraft Foods.
Right. The
of course.
cheesy macaronius.
What? No, it's Kraft Witch and Macaroni, the witchiest.
Oh.
That's what it is.
You got it.
Yeah.
I remember it being a lot scarier than it actually is. Like, it's not that scary, but I remember thinking of it as a horror film and being really, really scared when they, turn on Sarah and everything.
And it said it's more of like a failed charm pilot?
Yeah.
Or charmed pilot?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When they did Charmed,
mm-hmm.
didn't they use the Smiths cover? Isn't that the theme for Charmed? That was in the movie?
Oh, that very well could be. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, what did the Smiths have to do with witches?
Nothing.
Yeah, nothing. Are witches vegan?
Some probably are.
Are witches, do they have a big mouth and are kind of mad at everybody? What's Morrissey's problem?
Oh, boy. I don't know.
What if it's like one of those Snickers commercials and they're like, Morrissey, have a hot dog. You tend to get, and then he eats a hot dog and he's like, hey, what's up?
He's all good.
He becomes Elvis.
Right.
Yeah. I think we should try that. But why did you bring up the Craft?
Well, watched it recently, and it just...
No.
What?
Come on, work with me.
Oh,
I'm doing an ad.
Because we're doing it on Craft Disservices.
Yeah, Craft Disservices, our bad movie show.
That's right.
Which is, we should have, I'm going to try to start it with maybe Dracula Dead and Loving It or something where somebody comes back from the grave.
Okay.
Maybe Last Temptation of Christ. And, no, wait, he never dies in that one, so bad joke. So, yeah, it's coming back from the dead. We're restarting it, reviving it, summoning it.
Yes.
If you will. I am with my sisters, and we are one.
Right.
We are family. The Pointer Witches.
I drink of my sisters.
And whatever.
And blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, which I did. Here's a factoid that you'll get when we talk about the Craft on Craft Disservices. Just figured that one out.
Yeah.
There was a real Wicca on set. It's just a Wicca, right? Is that a plural?
Wicca or Wiccan?
No, Wiccan is like
plural?
It's like Islam and Islamic and
Okay.
Muslim. Yeah.
Okay.
And I have to imagine just watching it, and I don't want to give the whole shop away, but here's, again, an example of what we'll talk about on Craft Disservices.
Right.
Wiccans probably are... Wicca? Forget it. People who are witches probably hate the movie, right?
Right.
Or do they love it like, it's like, that was the scene, man. But the whole thing is about how, we're all... My sisters and me... I keep doing the Pointer Sisters thing. Hairspray and those belts.
Yep.
Really big belts. And then it's all about, give me the magic to, make Ben Stiller's wife's hair fall out.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I want.
Exactly.
It's not like a touchy, lovey, feely, earthy thing at all.
No, it's not.
So the Wicca lady who was advising them, at some point, did she feel like a Wicca traitor?
Maybe.
A Wicca traitor?
A Wicca traitor?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, she probably helped the lady who worked in the Wiccan shop quite a bit, too.
Yeah. It's not.
She's barely in the movie.
Not an important part of the movie.
No.
Like the only recognizable actress in the movie, or at least at that time. So that's the kind of thing we'll talk about on Craft Disservices, which is part of the Just Enough Trope network.
Yep.
Featuring this titular show,
yes.
Just Enough Trope, that we're doing right now. I'm your host, Caliban, joined as always by my co-host.
Hi, I'm Mikan Hana.
And I am sad.
You're sad?
Because everything's bad.
Okay. What's bad?
My sisters with me. Not the Pointer Sisters, but just everything else. But the problem is, it's, I feel like, what's his name? Crap.
Oh, boy.
The guy who's in the Body Snatchers from the 50s, it's like, he comes back and they're all, and he's like, oh, they're coming. It could be you. Right?
Sure.
What's his name? Forgot.
Oh, boy, I don't know.
He's in UHF. He owns the station. Very
Okay.
famous actor. Great actor. Everybody loves everything, and everything's terrible.
Yeah.
The show.
The show?
You have tuned in. No, we're not generally like that. And I don't like it when I get like that. So I'm trying to call myself out
Okay,
for doing
sure.
that. But that's
Right.
where I'm at right now. That's how I feel. There's all these things. I watched Hereditary recently.
Oh, you did?
Not good.
Oh,
It's not good.
everybody's saying it's good.
Yeah, well, there you go. It's on the level of what you'd come to expect these days for a run-of-the-mill horror movie. You know what I
Okay,
mean?
sure.
Like these, what do you call it? Like a prestige horror film.
Sure.
Not a Blumhouse found footage type thing, you know,
Right.
but like a Get Out, which is amazing.
Right.
Or next, you know, we got an Oscar winner or like an Oscar nominee in this thing. Definitely some BAFTAs here.
Right.
And it is. It's Gabriel Byrne and Toni Collette, and they both do a good job because they are good actors. Mm-hmm. Kevin McCarthy, that's the other good actor.
Sure.
And it's just not. It's not great. It's fine, but it's very long. It's just too long. Comedy and horror, short.
Yeah.
Hit it and quit it.
90 minutes or less.
Yeah, this is 2 hours. It doesn't need to be.
Wow.
It borrows heavily, liberally, I'd say, from Rosemary's Baby, which doesn't really ruin anything.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not ruining anything. And it seems like it's kind of going to make an interesting point about a couple things,
Sure.
and then it just turns into like, whoop, 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 whoop. You know, it's horror. And it's one of those bummer movies where I like Get Out because, yeah, it's got again, I guess we're going to soft spoilers for Get Out.
Right.
It's got kind of a positive ending. It could have had a negative ending.
It really could have.
That was the original ending.
Right.
But even that ending is more about the real world consequences than about anything that's really going on in the movie. And you've seen it, so you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And I hate horror movies that are just like, screw you, you're all dead because the world just sucks and everything's terrible.
Right.
You know, it's one thing to have like, oh, the one girl survived, everything's great, and then the last second is Jason grabs her out of the rowboat or something. That's just
Right.
a fun Grace Note tease. Like,
Right.
was she really dead? Was that a dream? It doesn't really matter. But these things are just like, they're cynical, everything sucks, everybody's dead, evil's going to reign triumphant no matter what. And that just bugs me. And yeah, I don't know.
Well, like you said, it's a bummer ending, and
Yeah.
we don't need that.
No, things can be dark and scary, and they can even be like, "Ooh, good point. You got me there."
Right.
But somebody can kind of walk away from it.
Right.
Every single episode of The Twilight Zone, basically.
Sure.
And then I also don't like how nobody acts this way. You know, one of the things I like about Get Out, and there is only really one character in Get Out who is a real person or is acting
Fully realized.
in self-defense. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I just don't like how it's like, well, this happened, so now I'm going to do this. Why would you do that? Nobody
Yeah.
would do that. I like
Right.
it better when you go upstairs instead of out the door because you have a motivation to, or where a character's like, it is the stupidest thing in the world that I would go down this dark tunnel right now.
Uh-huh.
But my cat ran through there, you know, or my girlfriend, I thought I heard her voice, or I have some reason. I don't want to do this, but I have to
Right.
do this. Only compliment I'll ever give Stephen King on this show is in The Shining, not The Shining, sorry, in The Stand, they're
Yep.
all S's.
Yes, they are.
There's this scene that's a very famous scene from the book and was in the TV show. I guess we'll give it that, the ABC miniseries.
Yep.
Where Larry, I think is his name, the folk singer, has to go through the Lincoln Tunnel.
Yes.
Yes, you remember this from The Stand?
I do remember
Okay,
this.
good,
Yeah.
good, yeah. After, weeks after the plague or whatever.
Yeah. So there's people that are dead.
And this is in a world
yeah.
of zombies. Like, there won't be anything in here.
Yeah.
It's a Stephen King thing, so maybe there's a world for something. But, it's not, there isn't any zombies or anything like that. It's just, he will be in this long underground tunnel that is completely dark with hundreds, if not thousands, of dead bodies.
Yes.
And it's terrifying.
Yeah.
He is terrified. And the whole time he's like, why am I doing this?
Right.
Except there's just, we can't get out of New York. There's no other way to get out of New York.
Right.
That's motivated.
Yep.
It isn't just, I just saw this, so I have to do this. And now I'm
Right.
going to do this. And I'm just going to do this.
Motivation is
But
important.
maybe I watch them. Yeah, it is. Well, in anything. But maybe I watch them wrong. Maybe we're supposed to I can't wait till this idiot dies.
It's so cynical.
And so they do idiot things. Yeah, it's all just cynical.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
No.
No.
Not a fan.
The horror movies that I do like are ones where, bad stuff happens and everybody is following their motivations and they're doing what makes sense to them.
Mm-hmm.
But the outside context problem of a demon or an alien with acid blood or something means that everything that they would do is the wrong thing to do.
Right.
But to them, it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So the aforementioned Alien, a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, The Witch.
Sure.
Fantastic,
Yeah.
a great horror film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Got an opinion?
I don't
I like Candyman.
I've actually never seen Candyman.
Yeah, we don't miss much.
But
Tony Todd.
I don't like horror movies that are like gotcha or like
Oh yeah, and the jump scares and
yeah. I'm not huge on like the Carnage Candy thing either.
Yeah.
I guess
Saw.
Yeah.
These idiots.
No thanks.
Yeah.
I'll pass.
Right.
I had friends who were like really into Scream, like when I was in high school.
Well, at least
and
it's
like
self-aware. It's trying to be.
I know, but that kind of freaked me out, and yet I watched it a whole bunch of times. So I don't know. I guess I prefer movies kind of like Carrie, where something bad happens, and
it's all psychological.
Yes.
And except for the murder, the prom.
Yes.
Death at the end.
Yeah.
And it's all a metaphor for, a girl who's growing up and her mom
Right.
who won't let her go. And
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But once you make that film,
Mm-hmm.
are you just going to keep doing it? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I don't mean literally, remake Carrie, although they have like twice
I know
now.
they have.
But once they nail that, do you do another movie about a girl with an overbearing mom, and it's called Black Swan?
Right.
You know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
there's did it ever get? It was a Canadian movie. I'm not sure it ever got a theatrical release. Called Ginger Snaps.
Oh yes, I
Starred
remember
Catherine
Ginger
Isabel,
Snaps.
who was herself an underrated actress, and it's clearly like a metaphor for adolescence.
Yes.
With these two sisters who are kind of like gothy,
Yeah.
gashly crumbed tiny characters come to life.
Yep.
Who haven't got their periods yet, and they're in high school, and they're kind of weird and detached and modern day Emily Dickinson types. And then one of them does, but also maybe one of them is like a werewolf.
Right.
And so there's the obvious things of like you're getting hair in places where yada yada yada.
Right.
But it's the kind of metaphor that you usually get with a boy, where it's like, I gotta put this dick somewhere. I'm a monster.
Oh my god.
But instead, it's like the girl side of that.
Yeah.
And it's just really kind of clever and fun and well done.
Yeah.
And then they made 2 crappy sequels.
Of course they did.
All right, we're not bad start, because we're not talking about horror on the show today, but we are talking about darkness and light,
That's true.
and never the twain shall meet,
That's
or will
also true.
they? And they will in Cloak and Dagger.
Yes.
We're talking about the ABC Family, the Freeform channel series Cloak and Dagger,
Yep.
inspired by the comic book Cloak and Dagger
Yep.
from Marvel Comics. And we'll be talking about the first mini-series introducing Cloak and Dagger to the world after their initial appearance in The Spectacular Spider-Man.
Okay.
And I'll be talking about that, and then we'll do a little kind of review of the pilot of Cloak and Dagger, which came out a couple weeks ago, but it's
Yeah.
kind of still going now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we'll be doing there, and talking about a little news as well. And then I had a chance to talk to journalist and author Dan Gearino the other day. He was doing a reading at Dreamhaven Comics, which is a great comic shop here in town.
Yep.
And he was doing the reading for his book, which is called Comic Shop, the retail mavericks who gave us a whole industry, basically, who gave us a new geek culture. And it is kind of a quick, not Reader's Digest, but sort of like a summarized version of the development of the comic shop as a thing.
Sure.
And really like the origins of the direct market and all that sort of thing. And I did a little interview with him about comic shops, some of his favorite comic shops, and the industry itself. And we'll get to that a little later in the show.
Okay, sounds great.
I think we've already kind of checked in, but how you doing?
I'm doing well, Cal. I just finished reading Outbreak by Melissa F. Olson.
That's the third book in the Nightshade series, right?
Yes, exactly. And
do characters do things that they would never do? Not in a
No.
Melissa Olson book.
No.
Because those are all real characters.
Yeah.
And they've all seen Buffy. So in her books, characters are like, oh, is this like a vampire thing? Like a Buffy thing?
Right.
Like they know, they're all smart.
Yeah, no, they're all smart. sometimes people try to be the hero and then they kind of die in the process.
Well, yeah, that's you got to have that.
Yeah.
But it's not like True Blood where it's like, I'd never heard of a vampire before.
No.
What's these? Vampires are a thing? What is this?
Everybody knows vampires are real, and that's kind of like the start of like the first book.
Yeah.
So,
but it's like Dracula and True Blood and Underworld still exist in that world, right? They're just they've just been
Dracula
laying
still
low.
exists for sure.
Right.
Yeah. And like some of the vampires are like super old, so been around for forever.
So do you get up real late then, or real early? Here's the joke.
Yeah.
They get up like before the sun's gone down all the way.
Right.
The old vampires.
Right.
But they can't go walk at the mall because it's light out still.
Right.
To them, the late night special is the early bird special.
That's true.
Old vampire jokes. Yeah. Let's talk about some news. So the big news, you know the big news. It's not good.
I don't know if I know the big news or not.
Just to summarize the big news is that so there's Chris Hardwick.
Yes.
He's the first nerd or whatever.
Yeah.
The king of the nerds. Mm-hmm. And he is a former CEO of Nerdist. It was his company, although he hasn't really been with them for a while, but he still sort of works in concert with them sometimes.
Yep.
He hosts panels at the Comic-Con shows.
Yep.
And he's got AMC show. He's got that NBC show. Was it a game show or a talk show?
I'm
I don't
not
know.
sure.
I don't have TV. But anyway, so that's him. He there's a girl that he dated a couple of years back named Chloe Dykstra, who is a model and cosplayer.
Mm-hmm.
And she wrote this long post on Medium about a former boyfriend of hers who started off a podcast and became a CEO.
Yep.
So we know she didn't name anybody, but we know who she's talking about.
Right.
And she detailed the abuse that she suffered at his hands,
right.
Like the emotional and like sexual abuse that she suffered.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you can look this up, but we won't recount everything here. But so it came out like on Friday. It was like a bombshell type situation.
Yep.
Everybody has been talking about it. AMC has now pulled his Talking Dead show, his Walking Dead follow-up show. He won't be on any of the Comic-Con panels. And so the usual kind of round of repercussions to this are happening. And then recently, this is all over the course of a weekend. This happened 48 hours ago.
Right.
He yesterday came out with a statement, like denying it, basically,
Sure.
and saying, I'd never do that, and that sort of thing. And so that's where we are in the story.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely a bombshell. It, and there are rumors out there that Chloe maybe is a little off kilter.
Really?
Yeah.
Where have you heard that?
Around. But
But okay, all right. But
at the same time,
well, at the same time, nothing.
Specificity,
Is the key to comedy? We're ahead with this.
No, but I mean, she was very specific in her detailings of what happened, her recount.
Yeah, though that's true. I've heard I've always heard that too. Like, it's not like he has like a running thing like on his Twitter about like this girl or whatever.
Right.
But I had just always heard in circles that she was, bad news and she had cheated on him or whatever, and she was, troubled. And I never really thought twice about it because I don't really know either of them, and I don't really care about either of them. But now I start to question, like, well, who would have started those rumors?
Right.
Chris Hardwick.
Yeah, I suppose.
Who writes the history, the victor?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it brings it all into question.
It does.
And yeah, I mean, I don't know.
It's rough because it's like you don't want to think that, like you said, he's kind of like the king of the nerds or whatever. You don't really want somebody who represents the nerd community.
He didn't represent me.
Well, that's true.
I didn't choose him.
I didn't choose him either, but
it looks bad for everybody.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well,
that's
then
what I was
that's
gonna
why
say.
if you're a person who is in power or wants to one day be in power, you
Right.
don't do things like this.
Exactly.
Ready to go to the next story, which is kind of the same story?
Yeah, I'm ready to go to the next story.
So, the two showrunners of Star Trek Discovery, Aaron Harberts and Gretchen Berg,
Yeah.
have been fired from the show and are leaving Discovery. Why?
Yeah.
They were abusive to the staff. Yes.
Both of them, huh?
It's creative. It's being stated that it's creative differences.
Of course it is.
And they're not fired. Like, Chris Hardwick is basically fired from, like, Talking Dead.
Right.
It's more, we're going in another direction. But sources close to the ground, they're very short. I've never understood that. Say that they were, sort of belligerent and they were rough on the staff. And speaking of the specificity, there's one not very specific anecdote about, like, Aaron Harbert's, like, leaning over the table and shouting an expletive at somebody.
Oh, boy.
And then the writers, felt more and more like they didn't want to work with them. Apparently they wanted to go to VR. They wanted to go into VR and make a phone call in the Matrix. They wanted to go to HR, but then Harbert's, like, buttonholed them and was like, we're going to keep this, inside.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. So
That's intense.
yeah. So they're gone.
All right.
This is the second time that Star Trek Discovery has lost a showrunner or showrunners.
That's not good.
Guess who's going to pick up the slack?
Who's it going to be? Alex Kurtzman?
Even worse.
Oh, boy.
Yes, executive producer and show co-creator Alex Kurtzman, and abject failure creatively, not necessarily in box office receipts, in every other part of his creative life, will be taking over the show as showrunner.
Wow.
As a placeholder, right?
I hope so. Until they find somebody else.
Right? We're going to go get
Isn't he
Tim
already
Kring or
busy?
something like that to sit in, or somebody, right?
Yeah.
Isn't he already busy?
Yeah.
No, he's not.
He's not?
No, because he crashed the Dark Universe
Oh, that's
with
right.
the Mummy. So, no, he's got all the time in the world. And, fun note, collaborator, that's a very cooperative dog. Collaborator and also crapulent fest man, Akiva Goldsman, executive producer, is leaving the show as well for similar reasons.
Really?
But this is more of a he's stepping away. Like, I bid thee good day.
Okay.
But the ears to the ground say, yeah, he's a jackhole.
Wow.
Mean guy.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I'd be mean too if I made a Winter's Tale. I'd be really mad at God for giving me so little ability. See, I said I didn't want to do this, but look how dark the world is.
I know.
It's terrible.
It is pretty terrible.
You know how terrible it is?
How terrible is it?
It's so terrible that Stan Lee has filed a restraining order against his manager, Cam Morgan.
Boy. We keep hearing stories about Stan the Man.
And we've been reporting on it, and you could have a Billy and Family Circus cartoon about the twisted path
really
that this
could.
thing has taken.
Yeah.
But it was like Stan was sick for a while recently, but he was sick earlier, supposedly, as well.
Yep.
When he made this deal with something, whoever it was, Pop Media or Boom or whatever it is,
Right.
Automatopoeia Enterprises, about using his likeness, and so he's suing them now. There was a thing where somebody had taken his blood.
Yeah, that's
to sign
really
things.
messed up.
Yeah, and then there was like accusations of elder abuse. And I've been following Stan Lee on social media for years. And then a couple weeks ago, he came on and he said, "Hey, true believers, this is the real Stan Lee. All that other stuff wasn't me. This is my first post. Can anybody tell me how to post a video?
Oh my God.
Excelsior." And now he's posting these videos where he's like got this like tough talk. And he's like, "I'm going to sue the asses off of anybody who tells me what to do." And that's how I came up with Daredevil.
Oh, my
and,
gosh.
So nobody knows what's going on. And apparently Cam Morgan is the guy who has been in his corner this whole time. So maybe 2 weeks ago, we reported that Stan Lee was held at gunpoint outside of his home.
Yes. Yes.
By somebody. And we're like, are those the guys from the company he's suing? We're like,
I know,
hey, old
right?
man, drop it. Well, it turns out that K.M. Morgan was arrested earlier this week for filing a false police report, which it's believed was in connection with that incident. So that incident was not what it seemed to be. And so now Stan has filed a restraining order against this guy. We're going to get this guy out of his life, it looks like. And that's what we need to do. He has been appointed a legal guardian, who's a guy that's has been a friend of his and is a lawyer, and is this is awesome. Is connected to his daughter,
Okay.
whom a lot of people think also is not a good influence on him.
Oh, great.
So, yeah.
Awesome.
Stands in trouble, true believers.
Yeah.
This is what happens.
Yeah.
It's the same thing that Nichelle Nichols is going through right now.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're about the same age.
Yeah.
Stan's older. What do you think?
I think it's upsetting. I think it's awful. Anybody tries to take advantage of the elderly. And
I agree, I guess. I agree.
I don't know if, like, this person is really did elder abuse or whatnot, but I guess I hope Stan is happy with the restraining order. I don't know.
Me either. I don't know either. Although I know it's launched 1,000 crappy headlines like Stan Lee needs a hero.
Right.
Jeez.
Oh, boy.
Kill yourself.
That's
Okay. Hey, it's not easy to write these things. Moving on to iffy kind of news. Looks like Comcast is making that all-cash bid for Fox. That is a reality now.
Oh, boy.
It's up to $65 billion, which is above the 52.4 billion cash in stock offer by the Disney company. So they saw it and raised it by 20%.
I really hope Disney gets it, just
a lot
because
of people do.
Of all the properties that Fox owns and everything.
Right.
I really hope Comcast doesn't get it, because that would just, I don't know, it would still be broken up. Marvel would still be broken up quite a bit.
Except for Powerless.
Yeah.
Don't you think that NBC would be a good place for a Marvel show, like a X-Men show, but like funny?
Absolutely.
What are some funny, like an X Factor show, X Factor Investigations on NBC?
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Because if it's Disney, it's all just going to be films, aggressively marketed.
Yeah, that's true. And maybe some TV shows, but they don't really seem to do a whole lot with TV.
Well, that's what we say. Yeah, why don't they make a TV show? Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. going into its 6th season.
Well, I suppose that's true.
Save the TV show talk. We'll get there. Got to save that for the end of the show. What else do we have? It looks like we've had some shots online of the Wonder Woman 1984 film, and it's really going to be called Wonder Woman 1984.
Really? That's going to be the title of the film.
It's not a great title.
Oh, boy.
I mean, we get that it's in the 80s.
Yeah,
We've got that.
absolutely.
Yeah, but it's called, yeah.
When you say 1984, it just reminds me of George Orwell.
Yeah,
So.
right. Wonder Woman's... They have to do a commercial where she runs in and she swings a hammer and hits a TV with a
Right.
wig on it. The Target lady. We did this last show. We already did this. I knew that sounded kind of funny. We already did this. We've seen some other... We've seen a somewhat updated costume. Looks a little brighter, actually, but not quite Linda Carter. And we've seen Chris Pine.
Really?
Chris Pine in this thing.
Well, that's surprising.
Yep. Speculate.
They go back in time and she saves him, or they're flashbacks?
No, he's in like a bomber jacket. Like he looks like Tom Cruise in Top Gun.
Seriously?
Yes.
Okay, so she goes back in time and like saves him somehow, and then he's alive in the 80s.
Boy, if they've
But
only
here's a question.
if they'd only
though.
got that Flashpoint movie together.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I know.
It'd be like if somehow Avengers 3 got delayed past like 2020 or 2021, and you've got like Captain Marvel and all these other things planned.
Right.
They're all up behind this thing.
Right.
You can't mess this up.
Right.
And this is how disjointed like DC is, because they could do this Flashpoint thing and just fix all of this.
I know.
I'll talk about why in a second, but sorry, go ahead and say your
But
piece.
my question is, so Wonder Woman doesn't really age a whole lot,
She never does.
And we're okay with that. Mm-hmm. She's got some sort of superhero, superpower.
Or demigod.
Right. But what about Chris Pine? Like, he's got to age, right? Mm-hmm. Like, even if he's alive in the 80s, he's got to be an old Chris Pine.
Mm-mm.
No?
No, he's got the need for speed.
I don't understand it then.
I don't either.
Okay.
We'll find out.
All right.
But it's not going to be dark, grim, to dark, dark, grim. Grim, dark. Speaking of which, it looks like Ben Affleck is 90% out as Batman.
Really?
Because Matt Reeves, the director of the upcoming The Batman, and by upcoming I mean...
sometime in the near future.
When it's ready.
Right.
Is the script will focus on a younger Batman.
Oh, boy.
Guys, just do year one.
Yeah.
Just do year one.
Seriously.
Yeah. And then you can just get everybody in there, have a good time.
Yeah.
I'd like to see them take a shot at a Long Halloween movie.
That would be good.
Yeah.
Because I love a Long Halloween.
I do too.
So, yeah, that would be interesting. You get a lot of characters in there, too.
Yeah, you get them all.
So, yeah.
It's probably too many.
Maybe.
Because you cast somebody and then you don't know if they're going to come back and sign him to a deal or whatever. Marvel never has that problem. Sebastian Stan has still 5 movies left on his contract.
Right.
The Flash movie is going to abandon somber themes.
So, again, it's not going to be dark and gritty.
Right.
Okay.
I think that's Jeff Johns or somebody said that. Probably because directors abandon the project.
Okay.
They've lost their 5th or 6th director at this point.
Holy
after
cow.
Lord and Miller and Rick Famuyiwa and other people.
Wow.
So do you think this is them coming out and going, like for years people have been like, you have a drinking problem. You have a drinking problem. You're on my roof. Get off my roof.
Right.
Where are we? You have a drinking problem. And this is them finally going, I think I'm going to stop drinking, everybody.
Right.
After it's like, to no one, to no friends.
Right.
And no family that will talk to them.
Right.
So I'm thinking that's kind of what this is. But it's probably the right way to go.
Yeah.
Who knew there were somber themes to begin with?
For the Flash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Flash is always, he's kind of a goofy guy. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, that looks good. We've got Todd Phillips' Joker standalone movie. That's the one. How many Joker movies are there? That's the one that's supposed to star Joaquin Phoenix.
Okay. And
the budget will be in the range of $55 million.
Wow.
No, that's not wow. That is very small.
Is it?
Yep. That is a character. That's an art film at this point. In terms of money for a comic book film. So I think they're going to do Killing Joke.
Okay.
Right?
Probably.
You do Killing Joke for how much does a Red Hood cost? Not that much.
I just have mixed feelings about them doing a Killing Joke.
Some little news blips as we head out here. The AT&T and Time Warner merger was approved.
Okay.
I guess that ties back into our earlier story. So it's open season on monopolies, everybody.
Wow.
No problems. No problems.
Wow.
Bryan Singer will receive the directing credit for Bohemian Rhapsody.
You're kidding me.
I am not kidding you.
Oh.
The law is the law, or the law of the
Wait, what
contract.
about the guy
is the
who took over? No?
Didn't shoot enough, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So everybody's going to be real mad about that.
Yep.
Everybody's like, man, I'm so excited for this. And I'm like, I know too much about this film.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't think it can be good, having seen and heard everything that I've seen and heard about the production.
I hope it's good.
Well, no, yeah, I hope it's good too. But I just think Rami Malek's going to get screwed. I think that it's not going to be that great. I think it'll be like, here's the review. Rami Malek's stand-up performance in a meandering, directionless movie. That's too much of a shined-up gloss on the lives of these guys who had a, very
kind
successful but up and down life. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, we got to kill this thing before it kills us.
Okay.
We have to stay alive. How about a live-action Eon Flux TV series?
That could be good.
You are eternally optimistic.
I know the movie was bad, but...
It's coming from Teen Wolf showrunner Jeff Davis.
Whoa. Well, it's going to be way different than Teen Wolf.
Everything Sucks, the podcast.
Oh, my gosh.
Welcome. No, Everything Sucks was canceled. And our last story, Jeff Johns steps down as the DC Entertainment president and CCO to focus on writing and producing, because what he really wants to do is direct.
Wow.
Jeff Johns no longer running the show at DC Comics.
That's a big deal.
Do you know why?
Why?
Because there's a new kingpin in town.
Who's the new kingpin?
mother effer looks like the Thing. Bald. Bendis.
Oh, you're right.
We talked about this months ago.
Yeah.
Like, it was Throwdown, drama, Bahama. It was going to be Bendis versus Johns, and it's not. Johns is like, I'm going to try this parachute out.
Yeah.
this glowing green parachute. And so he's going to go work on Shazam, the Green Lantern Corps movie, and all this stuff. But still, that's a lot of prestige that you are walking away from.
Absolutely.
He couldn't just be walking away, right?
I wouldn't
This
think
had to be like a, Jeff, you've got a lot on your plate.
Mm-hmm.
It's really important that these things work, right?
Right.
I'm Dan Didio and Jim Lee right now.
Sure.
Remember Green Lantern? You just saw Deadpool 2, right? They shit all over Green Lantern.
Right.
We gotta nail it.
Right.
So we need you out there, buddy. Go do it. You can do this thing.
You directing.
Knock,
and
knock, knock. Hey, guys. Brian, not yet. Right? Okay. I don't know why you have to leave by the window. Sorry. Okay, come on in, Brian. That's what I'm thinking.
I could see that. Wow. That's such a big change, though.
Well, Flash movie to abandon somber themes.
Yeah.
Green Lantern Corps movie to rip off every character's head and bowl it down a alley.
My God.
Jeff Johns.
Yeah.
Violent.
Yeah.
Gritty, dark, grim. Dark, dark. Grim, dark. Well, we got to see Dan Gearino speak about his new book and about comic shops and the history of the industry in general, and it was a fascinating talk, and he did a Q&A, which I thought was really great. This is all at Dreamhaven Books, which is owned by Greg Ketter, who is quietly, he's not out there telling everybody about this, but he's quietly one of the pillars, really, of the community as far as comic book store owners go. Mm-hmm. And one of the guys that was there in the early days, the development of the direct market and just the whole system as to how comic shops operate.
Right.
And I talked to Dan for a little bit. Here's our interview. Check it out. You write in the book about how when you first started the project, you figured it'd be a story about the decline of an industry that's facing a lot of crisis through digital media and things like that. But as you continue to learn that comics has been, and the field of comics has been in continual crisis, it seems like, since it began. What was something that you learned about the industry that was contrary to what you expected?
Well, that kind of core premise was really important, which is this is a business that almost destroys itself every 2 to 4 years. And each kind of version of that attempt at destruction, there are similar elements. There are certain things you see over and over again, but also each one's a little bit different. It's almost kind of like it's some sort of, it's almost as if our greater economy, if we were having a recession every couple of years, and what the chaos that would ensue from that. So going into this, I was thinking, this is just, this is a business that's kind of on this decline. It's this thing that's, I wanted to tell people about because it's not going to be around for forever.
Right.
But when you talk to a retailer from 30 years ago, they think they were talking then about how this business is going to die in a year. They were saying, "Oh my God, 1983," or I don't know. I'm just pulling that year out of the air. But there was a real rough patch in the early 80s, and you would see this over and over again. And of course, the early 90s was the deepest downturn that they're not there. The mid 90s were the deepest downturn the industry ever saw.
Right.
So the ups and downs are normal. So the way that I kind of chose to step back and try to look at it differently was, how is this current cycle different from the ones that came before? Like, what are the specific elements that are different? And that question is what opened up a lot of what I thought was the most interesting.
If you talk to one of those old guard, those guys who were in it 30 years ago, would they have a period that was like the sort of golden age, or would it just be a constant tale of things going wrong and like new challenges. Was there a period that was like the best time to be a comics retailer?
Well, there were a couple periods that were really good. There was this stretch in the 80s, like where, so the big moments that were difficult for retailers. There was this period in the 80s where there were a lot of really bad black and white comics, like the kind of post Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles
Sure, right.
bust, where everyone was publishing anthropomorphic animals, and most of the comics were terrible, and it was just fed by this speculator hysteria that, you you buy this and it'll be worth as much as the Turtles comic was.
Right.
So that the period, with the exception of that event, the 80s, there was a long stretch of the 80s that were really good for retailers, and it was a time when the business was really expanding, when there were stores opening, when existing stores, when there was just really vibrant competition, when there were a bunch of different distributors competing against each other to offer the best deals and offer the best services. It was a really dynamic business that was very much in a growth mode, and it was still a new enough business at that point that the first generation guys, not only were they still there, but they were in their prime of their careers.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were someone who was one of the very first shops to open in, say, the 70s, or because only a couple stores opened in the 60s and stayed in business. So so most of the long-term stores started in the 70s, the earliest ones. And those guys were just getting their sea legs at that point. You look at a store like Dreamhaven, circa, say, 1987. Mm-hmm. It's just, it was... I think that mid-'80s period was a real golden age. Also, there was this great period in the 90s when there was this real flowering of alternative comics, smaller publishers, and it was around the same time that the larger business was really failing. The mainstream comics business was doing poorly. Mm. So that's another one. In the 2000s, there was this long kind of gradual expansion. It was just kind of like this expansion that with no apparent recession. And it was... that was another one. So it's like, but yeah, so there were a couple golden ages. A lot of it kind of depends on where you were as a retailer. And
Sure.
what was, a golden age for retailers when you've been doing it about 3 years and you just kind of figured out what you're doing. You kind of figured, yeah.
Yeah. How did you decide who you were going to talk to create this picture of, because you've talked to a lot of different comic shops and comic shop owners. How did you decide who you were going to go to create the picture?
Well, that was really difficult. There are some usual suspects. Like, one of the first people I reached out to was Bud Plant, who is this great early... he was a co-owner of one of the first comic shop chains, if not the first comic shop chain. He was a distributor. He kind of did it all in the business, and he knows everybody. So Bud was one of the first guys. Chuck Rosansky at Mile High Comics was one that I got in touch with. One of the key interviews, and a lot of the way that I ended up viewing a lot of this stuff, is very much in line with the view that I got from Jim Hanley. Jim Hanley was a New York retailer. His store was called Jim Hanley's Universe. A great retailer and just a colorful character with just a vivid memory. That one thing that was great about Jim is he fact checked almost perfectly. He would have these very specific recollections, and then I would go to check with other people who were involved in the things he was saying, and they would say, yeah, basically,
that was it.
That was it. And once you kind of have confidence that that someone's a great storyteller, and they're telling you things that actually happened. It's just, and I think because of that, in fact, I think I opened myself to a bit of criticism, because it's like on a lot of the major events during that period, it's kind of like, oh, what did Jim Hanley think of this?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Your primary source.
Yeah.
Comic shops are like snowflakes in that no two seem to be alike. What, in your opinion, makes a shop really attractive to you?
Okay. I like the shop we're in, Dreamhaven Books and Comics. It has a lot of the qualities I really like, which is just this finding the thing you didn't know you were looking for. Mm-hmm. Thinking of it purely in terms of what makes a good comic shop business, one of the things I look for is, do they have a good kids section?
Oh, sure.
Kids comics are growing. Are this rapidly growing category. Comics are a mainstream medium for elementary school kids. If you go to an elementary school and you ask people to name their favorite comics, almost every kid in the room is going to have one.
Sure.
And when I was in school, that wasn't necessarily the case. There were certainly comics readers, but it wasn't as widespread, and it wasn't as mainstream as it is today. So now the thing about comics being sold today is they're being sold everywhere. They're being sold at all kinds of different retail outlets. They're widely available in libraries. The comics that kids are reading. But a store like this, if they have a well-stocked kids section, this is kind of a place where kids will find stuff they like that they can get other places.
Sure.
But then they'll find a whole bunch of stuff they can't get anywhere else.
Yeah.
And having a good kids section is the entry point.
Yeah. I think that your book makes a great case for the continued existence of the comic shop in the future. But there's still crisis in the industry. I mean, like, for instance, Meltdown Comics, which you have a profile on in your book, has closed. Mm-hmm. So how do you see comic shops ultimately keeping the doors open in the 21st century?
Well, it's... One of the things that several retailers told me about was this kind of the apocalypse plan. You know, they think, like, what if the big distributor goes out of business? What if a major publisher just stops publishing? What are the things that would really harm the business? And what the really good businesses do, a lot of them do things other than comics. They might have coffee, they might sell books, they might sell board games. And then others say, we've got this core audience that just likes coming here. Mm-hmm. We can shift to just selling old comics. We can just shift to selling comics in book form. We can shift to... so a transition, a big transition, a big upheaval in the industry would put a lot of shops out of business. But a shop that has a dedicated base of more than, say, 500 customers who are there, multiple times a month, they've got a leg up in terms of being able to survive.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thanks for talking with us. Where can people find you online?
I'm at dangearino.com, so that's DanGearino.com.
Great. And people can see you on your work on Inside Climate News. And your book, Comic Shop, is available online and in bookstores?
Yes. Yep. And I would say, if you want to get it, they sell it at Dreamhaven, of course, in the Twin Cities. And buy it at a comic shop if they're selling it. So,
yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
One of my favorite parts about Dan's book, actually, the entire thing is good. What I like about it is how accessible it is and how he gets the major players out there, the kind of people that you wouldn't know about necessarily. But then you look back and go, oh, yeah.
Right.
I remember seeing the old ads for, like, buy comics by mail, and it's the guy. It's like this Phil Seuling or whatever. It's like this guy who is at the center of this entire thing.
Right.
These 2 or 3 handful of people who just said, well, what if there's just a store where all this stuff is, and then you just did it like this?
Mm-hmm.
And I am old enough that, so a lot of the comics I got were me just going to the spinner rack at the Five and Dime.
Right. Because that's where they're available.
Yeah. But one of the things I really like about his, and also just him starting, he had the first Comic-Con, like in New York,
Yeah.
So it's really on, like, Phil where we get all this. Like, he is the unspoken king of this whole thing. Mm-hmm. But one of the things I really like about the book is the sort of second half where he goes through and he's traveled to all these comic shops around. He just profiles. And it isn't state by state. It's just sort of things that have come to his attention. Great examples of this kind of shop.
Sure.
The hardcore comics, the half and halves, comics and games, the tweeners or the outliers, the weird ones. And it's almost like a checklist. Like, I just want to go through and go to every single one. I've been to like maybe 10 out of the 40. But, yeah, there's just some really good shops in there. And I wish that I had a list like that when I was a kid. Because for me, going to the comic shop meant just going to Burnsville to the Shinders. Right. Which is not a good comic shop. But it's what we had. And then every once in a while, we would climb in the Pinto and head maybe downtown into the environs of Minneapolis to check out the source, or to go by Dreamhaven. Mm-hmm. So yeah, kids these days, I don't know how good they have it.
No, they don't.
All these comics,
coming
right to their iPad. And you read a lot of comics on iPad.
I do.
Do you? I always hear it's on. I don't like it. Like, I don't like the shape or the format or whatever. Do you have a problem with that?
I don't have a problem with it. I guess the only problem I have, and this is so minor, is sometimes the words get cut off on the page, so then you have to make it smaller.
Okay.
In order to read it.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But that's such a minor complaint.
Thing. Yeah. That's why I just don't. I mean, I get it. Like, I have a million comics in boxes, and
right.
I love reading them. I love holding a thing, but I read a lot of digital too, and it just works. Like, I don't have a problem with it.
It does just work, and you can fit a lot on there too.
Yeah, sure, right. Or the cloud,
right.
And so I think when Dan first, and he talks about this when he first sat down to do the book, he thought, well, I'm going to be writing about this industry, which is, I've got to find some way out of this thing, because now iPad's eating their lunch. Mm-hmm. And this is a crisis. And then he discovered that, oh, no, this is a industry that's been in free fall, like, since it began. Like, there's been a crisis, like, every turn of the bend.
Right.
And it's still endured somehow. And that's just a great story.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me love being in love with comic shops even more.
Absolutely.
So you haven't read it.
No, I haven't.
I recommend it to you.
Okay.
And I recommend it to anybody. It's Comic Shop, the Retail Mavericks, who gave us a new geek culture. It's available in hardcover. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it at your physical comic shops or bookshops. It might be at your comic shop. I know it's at Dreamhaven.
Right.
I'll have the link to it in the show notes, so you can click through and get it on Amazon. And I definitely say check it out. It's a great read. And thanks to Dan for talking with us. I got a pitch for you.
Okay.
You've got two sexy teens.
Yep.
One of them is a black man.
Yep.
One of them is a white woman.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you going? Wait. It's 1983. Let me finish. The black man eats people when he loses control. Hold on.
I know.
Wait a minute. And the white woman has a costume that's open to her navel. Now, where are you going? Officer, I don't know where Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a hard sell.
It is.
Just from the start.
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
We're talking about Cloak and Dagger.
That's right.
From Marvel Comics.
Yeah, we're talking about Cloak and Dagger, who are interesting characters with an interesting history. And I was a Cloak and Dagger fan from long way back.
Okay.
Not just saying that. I was always fascinated by the window that went to her crotch. No. I was always fascinated. Dumb. I was always fascinated by the very basic duality of the characters. Mm-hmm. And I liked their gritty origin, which we'll talk about. And I think a lot of the elements of them seem very dated and sort of basic now.
Yeah.
But if it was aimed at like a 12-year-old kid who's starting to read comics, and starting to get into more like adult entertainment, take it easy. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do know what you mean.
It was just right of the mark.
Yeah.
Like a light dagger thrown into my heart. It was
right.
like, wow, I love this.
Right.
They were created by Bill Mantlo. Remember him?
I know the name.
What? Come on. We've talked about Bill Mantlo a lot on the show before. Creator of Rocket Raccoon.
Oh, right.
Yeah, amongst other things. And Ed Hannigan, who was the artist on the issues of Spectacular Spider-Man that they appeared in.
Okay.
In 1982. And we read their first 4-issue miniseries.
Yep.
It came out in 1983, which really introduces them in more of a major way establishes them, if you will, in the Marvel Universe. And the art, the writing is by Mantlo for that. The art is by Rick Leonardi.
Okay.
Who is another perennial standby sort of that era.
Sure.
What happens in the miniseries Cloak and Dagger?
Well, Cloak and Dagger are trying to help runaways because they are runaways themselves. And they're kind of...
that's Runaways was later.
Okay, I know.
They do. Did you read Runaways where they showed up in Runaways? Because they show up in Runaways. Did you get that far?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's a good point. They do show up in Runaways.
Well, they're Runaways.
Yeah, I know. But they're vigilantes. They kind of take stuff on their own and kind of create their own justice. Yeah.
These guys got to break the law to enforce it.
Yeah, that's
Tell
right.
me that doesn't sound like a CBS franchise.
I know.
Continue.
So they just kind of show up and try to help these runaways whenever they can, and like they beat up on chicken hawks. And
Save it. We'll get there. Who are they?
They are Tandy. I don't remember her last name. Bowen, and Tyrone. I still don't remember his last name either.
Johnson,
I think you're right. I think it is Johnson.
because they just ran out of steam.
Yeah, they did. They're like Tandy and Tyrone, and then no more steam.
That's all we got.
Yeah. And their runaways, they met when they came to New York, and these people
Chicken
tricked
hawks.
them. What was that?
Nothing. Sorry, go ahead.
These people tricked them and said that they had space for them or room for them, food, that sort of thing. And then they took them to like this doctor, I say in quotation marks.
You're really getting into microscopic detail here.
Yeah, I know.
Why not just say mutant heroin superpowers?
Yeah. They get shot with mutant heroin and they get superpowers.
Yes.
So
Which somehow are the power to project light.
Yep.
And to purify things, and the power to have a black hole inside your entire body.
Pretty
basically.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, I hate it when mutant heroin gives me metaphorical superpowers. And also, we're mutants. Oh wait, we're not. We're not.
We're
Okay.
not.
Yeah.
No.
The very first issue of their 1985, I believe, ongoing series says the mixed up mutant adventures of Cloak and Dagger.
Really?
Mutants were really hot, of course, in the 80s and
Right.
in the 90s, and so they were sort of grandfathered in. There was even a point where Spider-Man thought that he might be a mutant. Like,
Really?
yeah, because some, usually at puberty or whenever, your powers manifest, but sometimes things can trigger your powers, like chemicals or something like
Sure.
that. Generally, that's thought of as being borderline mutant, but it comes down to, like, if you got the X gene, you're a mutant. If you don't, you don't.
Yeah.
And so in the 2000s, when they were kind of cleaning house, Cloak and Dagger were like hanging out with the X-Men or helping them do something, and they got tested, and they're like, you guys don't have the X gene, so you're not mutants. Like Deadpool is a mutate,
Okay.
which is what Cloak and Dagger are. They're people that, are affected by something and get powers through that. So
Sure.
Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, I guess maybe technically Cap could be considered a mutate, but
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Not mutants.
No.
But these guys going after those chicken hawks. So in this storyline, I don't know if you know this, but New York is pretty gritty.
I got that.
It's a hot town.
Yeah.
And it's summer in the city.
Yeah.
And down at the Port Authority,
Yep.
you know it's bad.
Yeah, I know, right?
And we meet this priest named Father Xavier Delgado or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. And he runs the mission or the church down there, and he feels lost, and he meets these two strange figures, Cloak and Dagger.
Yeah, and they
who are-
ask for kind of like asylum. or
Yeah,
something.
right. Yeah, well, basically, it's like, oh my God, please don't hurt me. And they're like, oh, we're not going to hurt you. You got like a sandwich?
Right.
We're real hungry.
And then we find out that Cloak doesn't eat.
I'm a dancer, and he's empty, so
Yeah.
we don't take much.
No.
And so they reveal their purpose to them, which is to protect the children.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, just right on cue, a pair of yokels step off the bus
Yep.
from BFE and are here to
Yep.
take in the city and are grabbed by these... I keep saying... Okay, so they use the word chicken hawks like 15 times.
I know.
But basically, it's just... what are they going to do with these kids? Oh, they're going to put them in the thing.
Yeah.
So there's Simon Cowell, or whatever his name is, who is a Roxxon chemical guy.
Yeah.
Roxxon, their model should be Roxxon. We're everywhere.
I know.
Want to make this a Marvel Universe joint?
Yep.
Put the word Roxxon in there
Yep.
somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Roxxon.
We're everywhere.
We're everywhere. And they get sued by Monsanto for that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they want to kidnap these kids and do what was done to Tandy and Ty, which is send them off to Ellis Island
Yep.
to shoot them on a metaphor with a metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
Because these guys want to invent a synthetic heroin, basically so they don't have to pay the Bolivians or whatever, wherever they get their heroin from already.
Right.
Yeah. But for some reason, it reacted strangely with Ty and Tandy and gave them these superpowers.
Mm-hmm.
So they're trying to help out these kids. One of the kids actually accidentally gets shot.
Yep.
Nice work. And then there is a detective, Bridget O'Reilly.
Yeah.
NYPD.
Yes.
Who is on the case. And she's
Yep.
trying to track them down because she thinks that they're bad. You can't be a vigilante. And that really comes down to like what, at least in this initial miniseries, the theme of this is, which is, how do you do good? There is good and evil in all of us, represented quite literally by the light and the dark that Dagger and Cloak represent.
Mm-hmm. And
if you are going to set out to take the law into your own hands, what right do you have? It's heady stuff for a kiddie book.
It is. And they're
in Hell's Kitchen.
Right.
So why isn't Daredevil knocking heads
Good
here?
question.
Get out of mine, turf.
Maybe because they're hanging out with chicken hawks and runaways. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's not his beat.
I don't touch chicken hawks.
Yeah.
Not after last time.
But the detective blames them for the death of the runaway.
Yeah.
And that really affects them.
And their inexperience, I mean, they are essentially teenagers with these amazing powers now.
Right.
Their inexperience makes them dangerous to themselves and others.
Mm-hmm.
There's it's basically the third issue where Cloak kind of disappears.
Yep.
And we learn that Cloak's powers are kind of the drawback on the team here. That he sort of constantly has this hunger to consume something, which is usually sated by Dagger's light. They kind of work as two halves of a team.
Mm-hmm.
It's very Eastern. It's very yin and yang.
True.
Yeah. And yin and yang.
Yeah.
They get separated, and then Cloak's like, I'll just eat a pimp.
I know.
Delicious.
I know. And then the pimps charge or what have you.
Oh, they're called a hooker.
A hooker. Okay. She begs for him to bring him back because she depended on him.
Right. Which Cloak didn't consider.
Yeah.
So everything is complicated.
Yeah.
And
so he regurgitates him back up or what have you.
Cloak and Dagger may be binary, but the world isn't.
Ooh.
Put that on your thing.
Yeah.
We're everywhere. Yeah, and then so that all goes through and kind of falls apart.
Yeah.
It's not really a big deal. At that time, the whole Tylenol killer thing was in the headlines, the real life headlines. And so in this, we have a guy who was going around and poisoning baby aspirin.
Yes.
Like, whoa, Bill.
I know.
Everything okay, buddy?
Yeah.
Right for the raccoon again. That was fun. Yeah, and so they get a hold of this guy, but it doesn't really matter. It just kind of ends.
Yeah.
It's over.
Well, Cloak swallows him, too.
Right, yeah.
And then the detective is like, I'm after you because you murdered him.
Right.
And all this stuff. I'm going to get you.
No, he's fine.
Yeah. And then he regurgitates him.
Yeah.
And it's fine.
But when you go through Cloak's cloak, you are, chilled. And often, not in this, but I think in other stories, you are confronted with all the evil that you have done. It's like a place of emptiness, but also contemplation. It's revisited on you. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's bad.
Yeah.
And Cloak can teleport, which that's how they usually get around. That's why they can show up anywhere. But you can go safely along with Cloak to teleport if Tandy's there to guide you with her light.
Right.
Yeah. It's all pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
A straightforward lie. Metaphor. That's what a lie means, right? Metaphor. And then in the fourth issue, we get the origin story of Tandy and Ty, Cloak and Dagger, which is, it's funny because I felt like Leonardi was sort of phoning some of the panels in, some of the pages in, like in the middle of the run. Mm-hmm. But I think he was saving it all for issue 4 because that's when he takes off. And you get what is a real, at this point, 80s Marvel, they know what they're doing. He's got a rocket roller skates.
Right.
And that's how he does it. They know how to do an origin story, and we get 2 for the price of 1. And you get this great situation where both Ty and Tandy are telling their stories, and we see the action of what happens. and the whole thing is framed
by a word balloon.
in a word balloon,
Yeah.
which points to the mouth of the characters, which we see in a small tableau at the bottom of the scene, them in this church, like telling the story. And it's like, I've never seen that before.
It's
and
pretty
I've read
cool.
so many comics.
Yeah.
It's really great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Their stories, they're fine.
Yeah, I know.
Stick with me now. She was a rich white girl
Yep.
who was a ballerina, or wanted to be one,
Yep.
and then ran away from home.
Yep,
And he
'cause-
was a poor black kid
Yep.
whose brother got shot, and then he ran away from home.
Yep.
That was it.
Yep.
Kind of stock.
Yep.
But that's when the mutant heroine comes in.
That's right.
Yeah.
They met supposedly like right after they got off the bus. Somebody tried to steal her purse, and Ty stops that person.
That was a great thing, too. Yeah. Because it also shows that sort of questionable or fungible morality where he was going to steal it
Yes.
a minute before somebody else did.
Yeah.
And then he helps her just instinctively, and she like gets him a hamburger or something like that.
Right.
And then as he's going to leave, she's like, well, I can give you some money. And he's like, I don't want it. And she's like, you don't have to feel ashamed. I just want to help you.
Right.
But it's like, it's partially that, but it's also he feels he's castigating himself because he was literally going to take the money, you know? And he hates what he thought, you know, what he was tempted to do before. Mm-hmm. And then that's all cut off because they get kidnapped by chicken hawks.
Right.
But still, these questions are the kind of things that get brought up.
Right.
So, yeah, I would put it down a point because it's like pre-Giuliani, New York, grim, it's gritty.
Right.
It's gritty. It's porno theaters.
Right.
But also, I would say plus for actually exploring some of the elements of vigilantism.
Yeah.
And the sort of socially positive social exploration of people who are robbing people. Batman just breaks the arms of people that try to rob people.
Right.
But maybe that guy's got 3 kids.
Right.
And he lost his job. Mm-hmm. And he just needs
To get by?
some postum to put on the table.
Right.
Yeah, right.
No, I get what you're saying. And yeah, I don't know. They do draw Tandy. Her costumes are all very revealing, and
Yeah.
even when she's dancing, she's wearing a white unitard thing.
Well, that's just.
And then she comes home, and her stepdad's there, and
When-
she's
yeah,
wearing
whenever she's
an
not wearing-
oversized button-up shirt.
Whenever she's not wearing her incredibly revealing costume,
Yeah.
she's fully naked and either in a
Yeah.
towel or a sheet.
Exactly.
So this is Rick Leonardi. He's a very good, very talented artist. But he also, it's like, well, late stage Art Adams is not great. But like Art Adams was like always a fantastic artist, could draw men, women, whatever.
Right.
And he liked drawing good looking men and women. And then sometimes, you know, it's
Fun times.
hopped up teens are reading this thing, give them a little thrill, little show.
Sure.
Later on, Brett Blevins takes over on the ongoing series, and it's worse.
Oh, boy.
Brett Blevins is like Rick Leonardi with a boner.
Oh, my
And
gosh.
you can quote me on that.
Wow.
But, yeah. And it's also 16. She's 16.
I know.
Yeah.
And her cutout looks like a dagger.
Yes, that is cool design. And there's
Yeah.
something else that I really like, which is Cloak is a cool design. There's no reason that it has to be blue and black stripes. That's
No.
just something that Rick Leonardi's like, this needs to pop.
Right.
And this is how it pops.
Right.
And that's cool. And I also like that he's totally empty inside, although he does have arms sometimes. They can come out of the cloak and they're totally black.
Okay.
I like the fact that her costume is contourless. Like, when you think about it, Jean Grey or whoever, she's got a butt-hugging, leotard as well.
Right.
But you'd see muscle definition or whatever.
Uh-huh.
When they draw her, she's contourless and almost completely blank.
Yep.
As if she is glowing, or bright, so that it... Like the same reason that when you cut to a close-up in a episode of Star Trek on Joan Collins, it's like... And it's like all overexposed and Vaselined, so we
Right.
don't see... I'm sure the very few lines on her face.
Right.
In this case, it's just she is just like a shape, like with legs, and arms. Like
That's
she
true.
is bright and glowing. So
That's very true.
yeah, but I mean, it's a little racy.
The cutouts of
would
her
be asked
boobs
to go
and
home.
her navel.
You would be asked to go home if you wore that to Catholic school.
Oh, yeah.
or the ballet.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Did I ever tell you about the kid who wore a Star Trek unitard to school one day and they told him to go home?
Save it. Save it for the Star Trek show.
Okay.
So anyway, they would go on to appear in other stuff, but they're kind of one of those characters. Ironically, they were paired with Doctor Strange, another one of those characters, who, and I'll finish my sentence, can't support their own title. They're one of those background characters that exist, that many of them in the Marvel Universe, we love them all, but not every character needs their own title necessarily. And they were paired with Doctor Strange to do a revival of Strange Tales.
Okay.
In the late 80s, I think. Anyway, but that didn't last. Big surprise. And then they just kind of floated around for a while. I haven't checked. They've probably got their own book now, thanks to the Freeform series, Cloak and Dagger, which we'll talk about in about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But I've always liked them, and I like when they show up.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that beyond their problem is, you set up these cool things, you set up the duality, you set up what do we really do, but this isn't Watchmen. And there's nowhere to go with it after you've set that up, which is why I think they don't succeed. And you can't add anybody to the team. You can't break them up because one of them will eat the world.
Right.
You can't have them grow up because they're kind of defined by being young
teens.
and naive.
Yeah.
And so they're kind of arrested forever as this. But getting them from the source... not the comic shop, but getting them, from their first appearance and the early issues of their ongoing are pretty good too. Yeah, I like them. Mm-hmm. They are to me like a flashbulb of a picture, frozen in time as this neat thing that's so 80s.
Sure.
Like Dazzler.
Oh yeah.
Dazzler is awesome from the late 70s, early 80s. They always try to she's punk now.
Right. No, she's not.
No, it's like trying to remake Gem.
Yeah.
Doesn't work.
No.
What'd you think? Final thoughts?
I like them. Dagger's, like, her powers are kind of, you're like, what is it exactly? Like, is it's light, and then sometimes it's light shaped like daggers.
I think that it's just light.
Yeah.
And then it, like, overwhelms you. And also, she can cure people of their addictions.
Yeah, which is pretty great.
Yeah. So I wish she'd hit me with Diet Coke. You are free. You are free from Diet Coke.
That would be pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, feel like Cloak being like this black hole is kind of scary, and dark.
Yeah. Also, all for representation, all for interracial couple.
Yeah.
But having a blonde white girl be the embodiment of
light.
purity and light.
Yeah.
And a black man being
darkness and shadow.
and potential evil.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a little problematic right there.
Not great. It was a different time.
It was a different time.
And it was written by Bill Mantlo, like one of the whitest guys ever. Love him. One of the whitest guys ever.
Right.
Literally got hurt while rollerblading. Like one of the
gosh.
He's very white. So anyway, would you recommend it?
Yeah, I would recommend it. I think it's a fun read.
I would too. If for nothing else, let's say you started reading in the 90s. It's all pooping face and pouches. Or let's say you started reading in the aughts. Sorry, the noughties.
Right.
God. And you started with Chuck Austen books. First of all, I'm sorry. But second of all, this is a great way to look into this era. Another way to do that would be the Power Man Iron Fist ongoing.
Sure.
Which is very of its time. But yeah, this is like Marvel's comeuppance. This is when they were really starting to roll. You know? So yeah, I would recommend it as well. Let's talk TV.
All right.
Let's talk Freeform.
Okay.
We are going to talk Freeform.
Yeah, we are.
We're also going to talk the Freeform series, Cloak and Dagger.
Yep.
What happens in Cloak and Dagger?
So there's a different origin story in the TV show than there is in the comics. It's a rainy night, and
So you don't have to do the whole thing. Do you?
okay. Well, basically, they're both somehow in the water when this huge explosion happens.
Did you know that they were in New Orleans?
No, that was not clear to me.
Yeah.
That was not clear to me.
We watched the pilot.
Yeah.
And by pilot, I mean first episode,
Yeah.
50 minutes, although the first 2 are really like the sort of pilot, but we got the idea.
Yeah.
And there was a point where there was an oil platform,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, okay, well, I mean, because I just figured everything's in New York, right?
Right.
Or L.A. So I was like, well,
Right.
there's some oil platforms off the West Coast.
Sure.
And then at one point, they're running through an above-ground cemetery. And I'm like,
That's when I
are
thought
they in New
maybe
Orleans or something?
there was New
Well,
Orleans.
the answer is yes.
But
It's set in New Orleans.
okay.
Specifically in a post-Katrina New Orleans. Because
Okay.
it's topical.
All right.
And it is actually shot in New Orleans.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well,
So
that's
way to make
pretty great.
Louisiana not look like Louisiana.
I know.
Sorry. So yes, continue. How are just tell us how they're different. What are the differences?
Well,
They get, I'll help you out.
okay.
They get their powers in a childhood accident.
Yes.
There's no mutant heroin.
No, there's no mutant heroin. It's a childhood accident. There's an oil spill,
By
explosion, Roxxon.
we're everywhere.
Yeah. And they both get hit with it, and they get their powers, but they don't come to be until they meet later as adults and touch hands, and then all of a sudden their powers are activated.
Because they are connected.
Yeah.
And they touch.
Yeah.
And let's see. Yeah.
So,
Right.
yeah.
And Tandy is,
A petty
first of all,
thief.
none of their parents are dead or missing.
That's not true.
Well, one of them's dead.
Yeah.
But she's got a stepfather.
Yeah.
They're all there because you need to fill out the cast of this show.
Yep.
And Tandy's lives in a crappy house because her dad worked for Roxxon.
Yep.
And they've blamed him for the explosion.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to make sure that if you're going to get rid of the cheesy 80s heroin plot,
Right.
let's just tie it into their... Because everybody loves it when it's tied into their families, right?
Right.
Kind of like how Richard Parker invented the serum or whatever that turned Peter Parker into Spider-Man.
Right.
Like that. People love that.
Yeah.
So they did that. And her mom is kind of a drunk and works at a diner, which we know because she's wearing a pink and white diner outfit
That's
with
right.
a cardigan. And we wouldn't know if she worked at a diner unless...
Well, and she takes
Everything's
pills,
great.
too,
Everything's
so.
really great.
Yeah.
She takes pills. I think you're talking about Tandy.
Well, Tandy, too.
Because Tandy is a semi-junkie who does rip and runs on rich kids.
Yep.
So a little different.
Yep.
And then Tyrone is somewhat similar. He's a basketball star like he was in the comics. He's not a stutterer because this isn't 1983, and
Right.
that's not a thing that they do in movies and TV anymore, unless it's Guillermo del Toro. Wrong Del Toro.
Benicio
del Toro.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great idea. And he's in a private school.
Yes.
So it's completely different than he used to be. Successful, upperly mobile black family.
Yep.
But his brother was shot to death by cops on the night in question
Yep.
that we're talking about when the oil platform went down. Mm-hmm. Accidentally shot.
Yes.
Twice.
How
do you double tap a kid in the chest when you're spooked by an explosion?
I don't know.
This guy's like unconscious. He's trained.
Yeah.
Or maybe we just wanted to be sure this kid was dead.
Yeah. But the cop who did it has a scar on his face, and Ty
which he must have got at some point, but we
some
don't know.
point, but we don't know when.
It's also a very identifying mark.
Yes.
And so he doesn't have it when Ty sees him as a kid. Ty sees him later, and that would be when, if you were trying to get this done in a certain amount of time and not kill time, which I think they were really trying to do, you would go, that's the guy.
Yeah.
Because of the scar.
Yeah.
I don't know why this cop has a scar, but we learned that he's not a good cop, so he could have got it in any situation.
Yeah.
But no, then he goes home and goes, this is the guy with the scar. He's the guy that did it.
Yes.
And then after all that research, he still gets his flashback moment.
Yep.
So I guess drive home for us? Or was it for him?
I don't know.
this is badly written. I just want to say,
Yeah.
maybe I'm beating around the bush too much.
Yeah.
So let me write my criticism. This is badly written.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not very good.
No, it's not.
It's by Joe Pekoski, who worked on Heroes, and that's pretty much his entire claim to fame. He also wrote a couple comics, but like the tail end of like the Ultimate Universe. So not kind of new to this. I mean, not new to superhero stuff, but Heroes, nobody's going to really stand up for that as being good either.
No.
This is just not great. It is an unnecessary update. Yes, New York's not like that anymore. So why not move it somewhere else?
Right.
They do, and they don't make use of any things that I see yet that you could. This isn't Treme, you know what I mean? Like
you could
isn't,
make it very obvious and pronounced that it's in New Orleans.
Yeah, but it's like and it's very careful. Now, I don't want to see a show necessarily where they're black, so they're criminals. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Clearly, you don't want to do that.
No.
But at the same time, it's not like The Wire went out of its way to not show black people committing crimes.
Right.
There's a divide here. You've got a character that comes from upper crust society and a character that doesn't. We want a contrast.
Mm-hmm.
And this lady's life is horrible, and this kid's not doing all that great himself.
Right.
And it's all set in New Orleans, but neither of them are really all that poor. I guess the Tandys, they're not doing well.
No, they're not.
So they've kind of tried to level it off to just change things for the hell of it, or to be just fair or like updated.
Right.
But I don't understand what the desired effect was.
I
Because the
don't know
leveling
either.
just means it's like, you know.
Who cares?
And people talk to each other like they'll never talk to each other. Like near the end of the first episode, we get Tyrone yells at his mom for being overprotective, and he says like, "You're putting weight on me because, you know, my brother died, and you think that if you let up for 1 second, then I'll die too," or whatever. And just nobody talks like that.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that, Joe, you got a kid? Run it by your kid.
Yeah.
Nobody talks. The teens do not talk the way that the teens in this talk. They just don't.
Yeah, and parents don't talk that way to their kids either. I thought you were going to mention how his mom says, "You feel me?" Because that was kind of jarring.
Sometimes parents, actually a lot of times parents say what they think is cool to be,
I suppose.
cool, uncool.
Yeah.
Uncool, cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Uncool, cool.
Right.
Too many, I bet. But that, not like that.
No.
Not like that.
Mm-mm.
No. I've been talking a lot. You talk.
Oh, at one point, Dagger is almost being raped, which is great. That's an awesome scene that we needed to have. And then a dagger of light comes out of her hand that she's cut previously. And
she stabs
the guy in the stomach.
Yeah, woo!
We don't know if that guy dies or not. He was an a-hole, so
He's
who
an
cares?
attempted rapist.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I'm sure at some point in the comics, her daggers have become physical things or whatever. But
Right.
it's almost like the people that, from ABC Family thought, well, people are going to hear dagger, and so they're going to expect she's got to stab things. They won't get that it's just light.
Right.
She's dagger.
Right.
So she's got to make crystals.
Right. I know.
There was a character named Crystal.
Yeah.
There are also characters who have crystal-based powers.
Sure.
Isn't like Songbird from like the Thunderbolts? Or is that all Sonic?
I have no idea.
Moonstone, that's it. Moonstone.
Okay.
Or whatever. Anyway. But it's got so she stabs a guy with a dagger. Dumb.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's all updated and they're I can't understand what these changes are for. So you've taken the drug element out.
Mm-hmm.
Now Tandy just snorts prescription pills.
Yep.
Now she's takes drugs.
Yep.
So Cloak and Dagger that's her anti drug.
Right.
I don't get what the point of that is. I just feel like they're juggling things around just for the hell of it.
Yeah, I feel like they are.
Why not
too.
do a period piece? Why not set it in the
80s?
pre-Giuliani New York?
Yeah. No, that's a good question.
Too expensive.
And I guess all the neon lights. But it just, I don't know. Their meeting is it's fine, but it's kind of
Where she robs him,
Yeah, she robs him.
just like in the comics.
Yeah. Well, he was thinking about robbing her.
Right,
in
but
the
you
comics.
have two characters who are essentially pure but are pushed to desperation.
Yeah.
And then are dealt with these things that sort of cast them in roles that they don't necessarily want.
Mm-hmm.
There's even a did you get the suggestion in the comic that she did the gardener?
The gardener?
Yeah. So in her origin story in the comic, Tandy's,
Yeah.
we get she's named after her dad's computer, by the way. People can just be named Tandy. You don't have to come up with a clever thing for that.
Right.
Now, I fully agree that it's possible that Bill Mantlo was staring at the ceiling and thinking, I got to call Marv Wolfman here. I'm in trouble. And he looks down at his word processor and it's a Tandy and he goes, hey, right?
Right.
But they take all the time to update that. Then we meet our black character. What's your name? Tyrone?
Yeah, I know.
Most stock name for a black character ever.
I know.
And he doesn't even say, yeah, I get it, I'm black or whatever. Like, nope,
No.
Tyrone.
Mm-hmm.
Rollerblading. So I just don't know what the point of the updates are. I also don't like how their cast is. I just feel like yeah, sure. They were really white bread in the comic, and then they are presented with these things. But like now they're putting this redemption arc in, I guess, because she starts talking about God and she lives in a church.
Yeah,
and I'm like, ABC Family, why are you doing this?
Yeah,
it's not necessary.
No,
she show reruns A Touch by an Angel. That's fine, but I think it's for their audience. I think when you're ABC Family, or sorry, Freeform, it's like the hammer and the nail thing. When you've got a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And I think that if you we should have known this wasn't going to turn out when we heard it was ABC Family, because when you're ABC Family, every show looks like my kid's into drugs.
Oh, sure.
But,
like a after school special sort of thing.
But finds God or finds a deeper connection to family because they were almost into car wreck or something like that. And then they realized what the right thing was. And then they got the basketball scholarship.
Right.
I think that's what all your problems look like that. But in the comic, so her mom doesn't pick her up because her mom is a fashion model or something like that, right? And then the guy picks her up and he's like he works at the house or something, like he's like the gardener or something like that. He's like, hey, Toots, you're looking pretty good in that thing, right? And it just seems like, all right, leave me alone, kind of, don't be gross kind of thing. Yeah. But then she comes home later and, her mom and dad aren't there and she's fighting with her dad because he's like, it's her stepdad. And she goes downstairs and he's like, hey, you're kind of tense. And she's like, yeah. And it's like, oh, and they kind of turn towards each other. And I got the feeling that there kind of was something going on there.
Yeah, I kind of got that feeling also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's not like totally pure.
No, she's not.
But she shouldn't. It's okay. She shouldn't be. But I don't think she needs to be intentionally homeless and like snorting crushed pills off a CD case.
Right. Exactly.
Would you recommend Cloak and Dagger on Freeform to anyone?
I think I would say that's a pass. Yeah. I don't know. I wish it was better. I wish there really tried, like, I almost want to say tired way of like having them get their powers, and I don't know. There was like, she remembers from the car wreck that there was a hand that reached out.
Yeah, because he teleports or whatever. Yeah. Nobody else was swimming at that time, or maybe
Apparently
we'll meet some people. It's like the accelerator accident on The Flash.
Well,
like,
that would be
maybe
interesting.
their enemy. Yeah, but it's not really.
I know,
because it's just Smallville.
I know.
Kryptonite created everybody.
Well, she powers. Like picks up his sweatshirt and like goes off.
And then
with
he's
that.
got a child's ballet shoe in his house.
I know, which is like,
just tell her where the body
weird.
is. We need closure. Yeah, I would not. Well, it depends on who you are. If you're a Cloak and Dagger fan, you're probably not going to like this. Mm-hmm. If you're somebody who has seen Runaways on Hulu, you know, or has enjoyed some of the talkier parts of the Marvel Netflix shows, and you're looking for something to try, and you're willing to put up with a little bit of soap opera, this might be for you. You know, the commitment is small. It's only 10 episodes.
Yeah, it's true.
But if you watch the first 2 and you don't like it, I've heard it gets better. But you know my policy, which is I'm not going to watch the whole thing to find out if it gets better.
Well,
so
right.
I'd say watch those first 2 episodes, and if it seems good, yeah, go for it. But if you're looking for some of that hot mutant heroin, grim and gritty, hookers on the waterfront action.
Right.
You're not going to get it here.
No.
So keep your dagger cutout leotard in the closet for this one.
That's right.
And because you'll get arrested.
Yeah.
If you try to wear that. It'd be funny if the cops like, oh, she's here to take us in because we might have killed that guy. No, indecent exposure. Cover up. Impractical superhero costumes are the best.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
How come there are always women, though? How come there isn't a guy that's like, you're gonna be hanging down here if you're not careful?
There's never a guy like
How
in
come
like
there isn't
a
a guy
Speedo.
in board shorts?
Yeah.
And no underwear.
Right.
And they're like, oh no.
There's just never is.
Sometime the Sentinels have to attack, the mansion in Westchester, right? They knock a wall out, and Wolverine is just getting out of the shower or something, right?
Right.
And he's in his flip flops and jammy pants or something like that. And then we've got a situation like that, right?
Right.
But it's never that.
No.
Instead, it's Mark Silvestri's penciling it. All the female members of the team are showering together currently,
right.
And that's when Nanny and Widowmaker show up.
Of course.
Or Orphan Maker, yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, anyway, it's all penciled by Brett Blevins, the way it ought to be. And the way things ought to be here is you should follow us on our social media outlets like Facebook and Twitter. You can look up Just Enough Trope and find us there. And you're listening to this now, but if you're not a normalness listener to the show, you can find us on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or Google Play, all the places that you get a show on the internet. That's where we are. When you go there, subscribe to the show. It is the best way to get the show. It comes to you as soon as it is ready. Also, if you'd leave us a review, we'd appreciate it because we love hearing from the fans and hearing how you think we're doing and what you'd like us to cover in the future. Some more 80s comics might be the way to go with that. That's kind of fun. Mm-hmm. But at the very least, give us a rating because that's how we move up in the ranks and how we get reach. We reach more people through that algorithm.
That's right.
I want somebody to do a dance craze called the algorithm. We'll work on that one later. We'll have that for the next show. But in the meantime, give us 5 chicken hawks. In a pear tree. You know what a chicken hawk is?
Isn't it a hawk that feeds on chickens?
That is what it literally is. Do you know what it metaphorically is?
Somebody who feeds on people who are lesser
that
than
tend to be
chickens. Small.
The word sounds like chickens. Children's.
Oh.
Children's.
Okay.
I read I tried to read in like high school a book about helicopter pilots in the Vietnam War.
Okay.
It was called Chicken Hawk. And my dad just saw the cover and he's like, you're not reading that. I'm taking this away.
Oh, boy.
Well, my parents are really react to the cover type people. Like all I had to do is look at the back cover and see how it was a real story of a guy learning to pilot Hueys in Vietnam. But anyway.
Did you get to finish that?
No.
Oh.
Ooh, I'm going to do it for the show.
There you go.
Yeah. I don't know if it's very good or not. But anyway, yeah, it is, the kind of people that Chris Hansen talked to.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. So anyway.
Take a seat.
In order... Have a seat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, couldn't hear you. I was eating these cookies and drinking the sweet tea. To avoid all that garbage that we just talked about, give us 5 stars instead. We'd appreciate it. Thanks again to Dan Gearino for interviewing with us, and go pick out his book. It's, like I said, there is a link to get it on Amazon from the show notes. And as far as next week goes, who knows? We're getting ready. We're ramping up for Convergence and getting ready for that. So there will be a lot of content coming your way soon. Mm-hmm. But I think we will probably continue to come back weekly in order to prepare for that. So we'll let you know on social media what we're talking about on next week's show. And until next week, we're signing off for now. I'm your host, Caliban.
I'm your co-host, Mikan Hana.
Keep the geek fires burning.